Well, shifting the goalposts, we have a very esteemed guest with us, Deb Reynolds. Welcome to the video podcast.
Yeah, morning, Will. Thanks for having me.
This is about your journey through obviously playing and coaching football, your experience, and then which we want to try and garner. You have an incredible experience of playing and coaching, and I want to try and extract that out of you as best we can on
Good luck.
a beautiful foggy morning with a coffee in front of us. I guess to start off with, how did you get into football? Where was it? And tell us your journey through football.
You mean football in terms of coaching?
No, from playing, from early days, where you grew up, how you got into it.
Oh gosh, I don't know that this is long enough. I come from Queenstown, the home of the gravel football oval. I grew up with three brothers, two of whom played football.
Were they younger or older?
Older.
Yep.
With the eldest being an Australian St John's ambulance champion. But he would then put all his Sunday efforts into the WTFA football so that there was safety in and around all grounds. So our family was very heavily involved in the football through playing and through the St John. I grew up with a couple of boys, cousins in and around where I lived. And being a girl who was active, I just wanted to join in, and they were good enough to let me join in. Football was one of those things that I picked up and just shared with them. So really I have them to thank probably more than anything. The basic fundamental and understanding of football came from what we used to call the fire track, across the road from us, from the streets, from the playgrounds, the worn out shoes of learning how to kick a drop kick. And back in those days, you didn't get shoes as often as you do now. That'd be a birthday present or a Christmas present. And so then you'd be walking around with holes in your shoes until such time. But that's where my love of football grew. And every Sunday watching my brothers play on the gravel, on the Zeehan Oval, and the Rosebery Ovals, which if, it was a day like today or we'd had rain, it was just mud. But it was fun. You watched a bit, but you played more.
Was football the community hub on the West Coast? Was that where everyone went on a Saturday, Sunday? Because there weren't other alternatives that there are today?
Alternatives. Queenstown/West Coast back in my day was very strong in regards to sport. But on a Sunday, yes, that was the hub for the community to go and be one. You would have, I say one, but it was actually two within Queenstown. You had the Queenstown Blues, and then you had the Lyell Gormanston Lions. And so the rivalry between those two teams was fierce. So as much as the community loved their football and they'd all go to that one ground if they were playing each other on that given Sunday, the rivalry was so great, you could actually see the line up through the ground. It was just there. So every opportunity you'd get as a young person, whether you be boy or girl, and that didn't bother me, you jumped on the ground and you had a kick before quarter time, after the game, in and around everything else that I'd do as well.
Were you afforded the opportunity to play in the leagues and competitions at all, or was that not a possibility?
Back then, it was my mum who, for a very long time, I didn't realise she was the first female in our family to have played football. She kept that a secret. But my mum didn't want me to play. It wasn't a thing that females did. It wasn't a thing that young girls did. Put yourselves in the contest amongst the boys and get yourself hurt. I was very welcome from a local point of view, from a club point of view, to go and play what was called mini league back then.
Yep.
And a couple of occasions I did. I slipped through the gates and
unbeknownst to your mother,
to my mum. And I told her later in life, and then she probably had a bit of a smile on her, on her face. But yeah, look, and I'd mix it with the best of them. It was awesome. I loved it. I never saw myself as a girl playing the boys. I was just a person playing
You were one
footy,
of the team.
and I loved it. And that's how they saw me. So that's my love of footy. It started, as a youngster, a young little girl from Queenstown. And then it really just grew. I followed it. I had a passion for Hawthorn from a very young age. And so therefore, your understanding of the game grows when you're watching the football on a bigger stage.
Would you get to many games outside the West Coast to see what else was happening?
Not back then. Not unless my brother Adrian was playing representative football. So therefore, as a family, we'd head to the Northwest Coast or we'd head south. He was in the era and played with and against Chrissy Fagan.
Yep.
So football was good. And so if you got to make that representative team, it was really worth the trip, and the family was just so supportive. That's what you did. Yeah.
And so you developed a playing career outside of the West Coast, and was that an enjoyable experience?
Yeah, I moved to Launceston roughly in my early 20s, and the opportunity became available through Launceston, first women's football club here in the north, and it was in a competition with the southern sort of group. So I was part of that, and I really enjoyed it. That thirst of wanting to play football, I guess, in a competition that was for females, and it was accepted. It was great, but at the same time, it was very raw in the infancy, where I was prepared to turn up and train and learn more about the game as a player. And I did for a couple of seasons, but it wore thin in many ways because the girls didn't take it seriously. And I don't know if this is for airing, but they'd still turn up drunk from the day before, or they'd be vomiting on the bus, and they were quick if they didn't get their own way on the ground to throw a fist. And I was playing sort of high level sport elsewhere, and with a young family, I just kind of thought I'll just go back and do that, and then I can control, I guess, how much I want to put into it, and then the outcome myself. So I was probably too ready for it,
Yep.
if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I did that anyway for a few seasons, and it was fantastic. And I made some really good friends, got to play some good footy at different times, and then started sort of, I guess I had a comeback year many years later, and loved that. That was really good, but that's further down the track. So, yeah.
I imagine there was a mix of apprehension, but also excitement with that Launceston team, in that you're forging ahead with something unknown, but at the same time, there's an apprehension of we don't know what we're getting into here a little bit.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but in all honesty, a lot of the girls, I say a lot, probably the higher percentage of girls had grown up with similar thoughts to myself and just wanted to play.
Yep.
So they were as keen as mustard. Then it was just the few, we'll go and give it a crack and see what it's like. People say footy's fun, and they were the ones that probably in some ways weren't ready for it, like myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd give anything now to be, a little bit younger, to have the opportunities that are available now.
Yep.
It'd be awesome.
Yeah, it certainly changed a lot since those times. As far as a coaching component, how did you step into that? Was there a light bulb moment that you recognised that, from a leadership point of view, or trying to see where others were potentially going wrong, and trying to relate to that and then steer them back on the same path, on the right path, or anything? Or was coaching something that came naturally to you, and you?
It was none of that. In all honesty, it was none of that. I'd grown up through and played many different sports and had many different coaches that I looked up to, and I'll always say to my players now, sometimes things come along and it's one of those tools you want to put in your toolbox, and you never know when you might use it. And along the journey, I did that. But I didn't go looking for football coaching. It came to me. My son, or first and foremost, it started here at East Launceston. My son was coming along at under nines, and, one day before training, we were just having a bit of a kick, and you could almost hear and physically feel the heads just turning. It's like, there's a female over there, she can actually kick a footy. And I don't think anything of that, because that's what I grew up doing. It was just second nature. At any rate, a few weeks went on, and then all of a sudden I got tapped on the shoulder to ask if I'd like to coach. By memory, it might have been Bill Dowling,
Yeah.
who was here. He may have been absent or something rather than asked if I could fill in. At any rate, one thing led to another, and I coached my son for a number of years. And then the female space opened. You know, for the very first time, there was going to be an under-17 girls team. And having coached that, you know, in the 9s, 10s and 11s, and they'd swing off the goalpost when the ball wasn't around them, I thought, oh, I got asked, and Lizzie Dixon was going to be the manager, and she's an amazing person who I've connected with over many years through basketball. And I thought, well, why not? If I can share some of my knowledge with these girls, and one of the biggest things I've learned is you can coach football, but there's many tools that come from other sports that can relate to coaching. It's not just you coaching footy, you're coaching life. You know, you're pulling some of the basketball knowledge across, you're pulling some of the netball knowledge across. And if you communicate well enough to those young females, it all makes sense. And you just build. You just build on small little things and keep growing. So that's sort of, I guess, where it started.
Is it in that infancy of going through coaching, Zach, with the 9s, 10s and 12s and then stepping into 17s? Were you cognizant of that you were actively coaching and that you were building your toolbox on top of that and drawing from external? Or was it, as you say, was it just, it felt natural to you and it was just something that you were doing?
Yeah, it felt natural. It really did.
Because not all coaches or potential coaches can say that, because it doesn't always come naturally.
No, it doesn't. But I think when you've been surrounded by many good people in the right roles, coming through your junior sporting, life, and then, like I said, sometimes you pick up on the things that you think you might, and then being in education and then being a parent, it just sort of all happens, really. And then with the girls, it was really stripping back and pulling back, because a lot of them didn't even know what footy was, other than you see.
Did that come as a surprise to you, or no?
No, it didn't. You really had
to. Did it reset your coaching to think that you were on this progression, and all of a sudden you had to pare back a little bit?
But I wasn't on a progression at that point.
Then.
I'd come from coaching junior football with the boys, where they swung around on the goalposts, to an opportunity to coach the girls for the first time. So it wasn't a progression at that time. I was helping out a local footy club, and I was sharing some of my passion with a group of girls who turned up to give it a go. Now, you had to strip things back. You literally had to break the craft down at different times for them to understand it. But it was how you communicated with them that's where you saw the growth. If you could communicate the right message that they could relate to, then you achieved a lot of what you needed to achieve. Because internally, you'd have your own little goals of what you wanted to achieve, on any given training night or game day. And then you'd have certain things and measures with the team, just so that they could see progression, which was really important, because if they could see it, well, hey, that's another step up the ladder, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But you had the likes of Mia King. She was one of these people. And Mia and I still touch base today, and we're still, good friends and so forth. But she turned up having no knowledge of football in terms of playing, really. She'd played other sports and been good at it, so the game sense she had. It was just a matter of linking that together to put it into a football component.
And I think that's potentially, you've touched on something that potentially coaches in their infancy get confused. They get weighed down in tactics and structures and game plans and all of that sort of thing. When at the end of the day, if you have a raw group with potential, or maybe not even with potential, it comes down to the very simplistic things of creating a fun and safe environment, communicating well, and getting engagement with that group, rather than implementing a set play kick out or an 18-person press, and I think that's where confusion exists for some coaches.
I think you're right. I think things can be overcoached. The biggest thing for us for the journey that I had with these two girls was to have fun, first and foremost. And did we do that? Absolutely. If you talk to anyone back in this environment who was around, they'll say they were the best 2 years that they'd ever been a part of. And we still see each other now, and myself and Liz and the group of girls, the amount of stories that we retell from those 2 years is amazing. You know, you had girls that have never played football since, but that's a memory that they've held strong. And you're talking now 10 years later or something, or whatever it is on the board. You know, back 16 and 17, not quite 10 years, but yeah, it made a difference to some. It made them feel like they belonged to something.
And again, that's something that as a coach you can impact someone's life well and truly outside of football, rather than just for the 12, 15 weeks that you have them for on a Sunday morning or whatever it is.
You know, there are wins all over the ground. There were wins right through those 2 seasons. You know, you had, and I don't want to sort of bore you too much, but
no, please.
We lost to, in the first season, we lost to both Evandale and Launceston by in excess of 100 points the first time we played them. We then went on to knock one of them out in the prelim and knock the second one out in the grand final. So the progression was good. But we had a team. We actually, and the real meaning of what you call a team. Yeah.
Did what challenges or obstacles have you faced along the way, whether it be from a positional point of view, being in a coaching role or an assistant coach, or a community point of view? Have there been any real challenges that you've actually recognised and gone, oh, hang on, I'm going to have to work my way through this?
You see people, particularly the male, look at you differently, and they might ask you questions thinking that you may not be able to understand them. Are they challenges? I'm not sure. I'm a big believer that if you want something, you just do it, or you find a way. So I don't think in any part of my football journey, from a very young age, little girl back in Queenstown, to where I sit today, I've had a challenge. You feel it sometimes, but like I said, with that male looking over you and asking you the questions they're hoping you don't know. But mostly I've had support, and that might be rare, but I've had support all the way through my now football journey. From here at East Launceston, having the opportunity to work with the young kids, the young boys, the opportunity of the girls. And then from here, I was given an opportunity to work with the Devils girls. And that was fantastic, right at the infancy, where we'd travel to the mainland and have, I guess, games that weren't for points, but the other teams were good enough to play us for our experience and to give us exposure to where the girls are now. So that, from there, and then, you know, Sammy Lonigan from Launceston, as senior head coach, I received a call from him one day offering me an opportunity at the club with the senior men as a line coach. So having worked, I guess, at different levels, both male and female within the state, I feel that people have supported me probably more than made anything in terms of my footy life difficult. So no, it's probably a no in that respect.
You mentioned your progression through to assistant coaching senior men. You're now in the position of state women's coach.
Yes.
And you also have an exciting role with the Devils Talent Academy. Is there a typical week at the moment for Deb Reynolds, or is it? Or is it, I know you've got a game coming up in a couple of weeks, and we had to try and pin down this time.
Look, a typical week in our household is busy.
Yep.
And my kids are so flexible and understanding, because I don't miss anything of theirs either. They're priority to me. Ash is really supportive, and he helps balance everything out. But our life is full. If I get a night at home and the news is on television, it's like, gosh, this is unusual, because we're never actually at home at that point. So I think to be able to do something such as me at the moment, you've got to be within a supportive environment. But I've got an exciting role with the state team at the minute, and wow, we've got an exciting group. You know, it was great last year and we had an exciting list last year, but we've got more time to, I guess, to look at the girls this year. We've got more times to prepare the girls this year going into our Queensland game very soon. And it's really exciting. I mean, you were there on the weekend watching the Tri-Series rep game, which was the North versus the Northwest. And I'd honestly say that's the most competitive senior women's football
Probably
game
have to
I've
agree with
actually
you,
seen.
yeah.
So when you see something like that, it whets your appetite for more. And the group of girls, I've had messages leading into that game and post that game. Can you give me some feedback?
Really?
Yeah.
So they're hungry for
Yeah.
communication and feedback to improve their games.
Yeah, they are. So it was really evident from the regional training we had first up, both in the north and the south. I had feedback, and then I had messages wanting feedback from the first squad training last week, and then what can I do post Sunday's game? Can I have some feedback, pardon me, to take me into, you know, the next game this weekend, or in general, how do I become a better football player? And so the thirst of those girls wanting to be better, because these girls want to do more in terms of with their footy. They see a pathway now, and I just think that helps them along the way. They can see something and they just want to be better. And now it's really important to deliver that message appropriately.
That's what I'm going to ask.
And
Do you find that easy to provide that feedback?
Yeah, I do, because I think if you're honest, you're asking those players to give you everything. So you have the responsibility to be honest with them. And I'm prepared to do that. So I think if I can be that person and they can see that I've actually watched the game and now the feedback is based off what I've seen, etc.
Yep.
And if they're that right type of person, they'll take that on board. If they're the right person that actually asks the question for the right reason.
So you're building a relationship there. So there's a trust component, and again, it probably comes back to what coaches misread, is that it's engaging with your playing group and understanding an individual or a group first and foremost before it's a set plays or whatever.
Coaching's just not moving magnets.
No.
Coaching is a number of things, but first and foremost, you need to build a connection.
Yep.
You need to know a little bit about the player away from the football ground. And so I have to do that in a short space of time. Some of these girls come from last year, so there's been that connection for a 12-month period, and I've maintained that connection throughout that 12-month period. Some of the girls have, you know, that they've gone on to play VFL, and so you follow them through that, and so you always keep that line open in regards to the connection. And they still come and ask questions, which is fantastic. And then you've got to make sure that when they're on the ground, you're actually coaching A to Z.
Mm-hmm.
You're not coaching, you know, B, D, E. So that is really important as well. You've got the whole alphabet that you've got to actually coach.
And that, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's where a skilled coach knows when to draw upon that pathway through to teach a player or a group?
Yeah, you do. And those will drive it a little bit more.
Yep.
And they'll continually ask for feedback. And then that feedback, it's like, well, okay, so how do I use it now appropriately in certain circumstances? So that's important. But the connection, the communication in how you deliver the message is really, really important.
Do you see that, is that improved in your time in football?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
You know, you sit back and you listen now, and that's something I get to do through the rep series. I get to watch locally in all regions and listen. And still, in many cases, there are male coaches coaching the females, and it is getting better. I still believe there's room for improvement, because as much as the girls ask questions, they want to be heard, so you've got to listen. Yep. And sometimes it's not the magnet moving. It's knowing what you can get out of that girl by just giving a little bit of a bit of feedback in the right way, knowing their strengths,
yep,
kind of thing. And their strength might not be over the ball, it might be off the ball, kind of thing. So
I'm hesitant to ask this question because I don't think it's happened yet. What has been the most memorable moment of your football journey? Or has it not happened yet?
Oh, look, I think there's more to come. But I honestly think that 2016 year with the East Launceston junior girls, coming from a group of girls that walked through this very gate, had no idea about footy, the way we connected as a team and the bond that those girls still have today. Yeah, we went on and won, and that's magnificent. You know, we started with the scoreboard 0 to triple figures, and we had success, but we had success in other ways. Like I said to you earlier, these girls still connect, still have memories from what that group created. So that, and I know that's, you know, it's a junior level, but you have little moments along the way. So to me, that's one. That's pretty special. There's little bits elsewhere.
Yep.
But I think there is stuff still to come.
Good.
I'm always looking at improving myself to hopefully one day have the opportunity for something where I can maybe answer something else to that question.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really honest answer, is that unless we've all achieved, whether it be in life, in work, in football, if we've achieved that high point, well, then the question is, why are you continuing to go? And I think a lot of coaches need to recognise that whilst a premiership might be put on a pedestal as being the top of the pile, it's actually, as you say, connection. It might, with a group or an individual, or seeing player development coming through, that is arguably more important than a medal around your neck at the end of the day.
And have you made a difference in someone's
Yeah.
life? And we did that year.
Yeah.
So that was pretty special.
I want you to look into this crystal ball.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Where do you see women's and girls football in Tasmania, and probably more broadly nationally, in the next 5 to 10 years? Obviously, we've got the Devils team that will come into play, or the AFLW team in coming years. But where do you see football in Tassie and more broadly going? Or where do you hope it goes?
Yeah, I think there's still a way to go. I think those steps are still being formed, and the Tasmanian football team are certainly putting those steps into motion. But I think the biggest thing for female football is to be in a conversation where it fits,
Yep.
where it's not a separate conversation to men's football. You hear now quite often, you know, the girls haven't grown up with football, this, that, and everything else, and the boys have had the football in their hand for a very long time, 100 plus years. That, you know, it goes back to men have been playing football for a long time. I think it's really important that you don't put the females into that space. Our journey's just begun. Mm-hmm. So that's where we start talking from. These young girls now that are now starting to walk around with the football, and it's now becoming their main sport, and they have a pathway in front of them. They can see it. And when you can see something, you want it more. When it's just conversation, but when they can see it. So I think it's a conversation. Women's football fits just in a normal conversation. It's not a separate male and female. So it's just an ease of conversation about women playing footy. I see football becoming very strong here in Tasmania, particularly in both. We talk about the Tassie footy team, and it's very important that you talk about the team.
Rather than just a side.
It's not a side. It's not men. It's not women. It's a team. Mm-hmm. It's a club, and that's probably the word. It's a club. So, and they'll be a part of the Tasmanian communities, and the girls that earn the right to wear the Tassie jumper will then be role models for the youngsters still coming through. and it's important that they do that.
And you firmly see that thirst is there with the girls that are coming up through.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I watched the Coates girls earlier in Penguin Sunday, and the football's right there for the taking.
Yep.
You can tell how they attack the footy. They're wanting to get better. There's something for them to strive to. But flip to that, you've got the young kids on the side, behind the boundary, hanging over the fence, trying to listen to what's happening on the boundary line, or they're quick out there at quarter time, or they're kicking the footy, whatever it might be. They want to be one of those girls. So it's there.
Yep.
It's actually then just having the pieces of the puzzle in the right place so that can be achieved.
And is that happening through your eyes?
I think it is in part.
Yep.
I think it is in part. I think we've still got a ways to go, but I think the right pieces are there. It's just putting them together.
Yep.
Yeah.
What, I guess the golden nugget that I'm after here is, what advice have you got for a potential coach coming into the game that will help them succeed at community level coaching? It might be a mother watching this that has a son that coaches and plays and potentially has to step in for under nines for 1 week. What advice have you got for them?
If they want to actually be a coach, or
If they want to be a coach, or if they're unsure about what coaching actually is.
I guess then at any level, it has to be fun. So if you're jumping in to help out in the under nines, first and foremost is you've got to make it fun for them. And when you've got the kids swinging around the goalposts and then you move your magnets because they all shift positions, it's just delivering a clear message of that. But it's giving yourself opportunity. And I'm probably speaking at a different level now. At different times through my journey, I've had to find my opportunity. And you have to look in different ways to do that. And it might not necessarily come from footy. More than ever, the link of other sports is coming into our game of football. I could sit here and say to you, well, what does basketball have to do with football? I'm not sure. Can you answer that?
Probably not off the cuff, no.
Zone defence. Straight away. It's just on a bigger playing field. So there's a connection with other sports that are coming into our game more and more, particularly at the higher level.
So you're suggesting that someone that has coached basketball or hockey or something should not be afraid of coming in and stepping in and coaching AFL because you have the bones there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But also as a coach, don't be scared to look to other sports where you've had, experience and where you can still go and learn from, but you bring it back into the football space. NFL is a big player in that. It's come into our game a little bit as well. So it's keeping a broad mind. It's going to find other avenues of learning that you can bring into the football area. It's continuing to grow your own development. And if it's not there, go and find it. Go and knock on somebody's door. Don't let them. And it's probably something I haven't done enough in actual fact, because I'm a pretty reserved.
I like that there was recognition and acknowledgement there.
I'm very humble. I'm very reserved. I don't seek limelight or anything like that. But if you're an aspiring young coach, you need to keep knocking, you need to keep calling, you need to keep finding a way, because it's that perseverance that ultimately is going to give you the opportunity. And so they have to do that. And if it's a female, who I think females will be within the game more naturally, just do it.
Yep.
Don't be scared if it's a male team or that. In many ways, they're great to coach.
Yep.
The male space is awesome to work with as well. It's different, but it's great. Yeah, so don't stop. Find ways to improve your knowledge, your development, not just with the magnet moving, but in the wellbeing space. And that's really important because you have to connect with the team. You have to know them as individuals, not just magnets. And you need to know how they communicate, how they learn, how you can get the best out of them.
I'm going to start taking some notes here as I go. Deb, we wish you all the best for the state game that you've got in a couple of weeks.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you for delivering your vast knowledge to whoever is watching this. And we look forward to seeing where you go in your football journey.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Will, and happy to chat again maybe post the rep series.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, it'd be good.
Deb,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.